So for almost a decade now, I've been studying Warren Buffett, and I bought the books he basically recommended, like Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits by Philip Fisher. I bought, for example, also The Intelligent Investor. This was a classic. And I also even read the more dense books, like Security Analyst, okay, by Ben Graham and David Dodd. Now, these books right here, they get you to understand exactly where the mentality of Warren Buffett actually comes from, and if you actually want to be like him, what you actually need to do. But the more I study Warren Buffett, the more I read his articles, the more I watched his shareholder meetings, the more I read the books he recommended, I realized that Warren Buffett has not said anything new in the past 50 years or so. All he does is says the exact same thing,
Go to work, go to work, go to work, go to work, go to work.
answer the same questions, just with different variations, different situations. But at the core is financial advice that lasts a lifetime. And to me, that matters a lot, because if you have, for example, someone you look up to, you want to make sure you're not obviously always having to keep up to date because they change their minds all the time. So it's very important. Warren Buffett's advice is lifetime advice, and that's why the 4 pieces of information I'm going to share with you guys in this video are pieces of advice I learned from Warren Buffett that they go beyond just 2023 or 2024. They're there for a lifetime, and I hope this video actually helps you a ton. And as always, guys, like this video on top of also subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified. Now, the very first thing, guys, is going to be 97% of people out there should be just investing into low-cost index funds. Now, I hated the idea of investing into a low-cost index fund. And by the way, a low-cost index fund, an index fund is a type of mutual fund. And the whole idea is you're trying to track a certain part of the market. For example, if you invest into an index fund like the S&P 500, it tracks the 500 biggest companies in the US. Thus, you're basically invested in the US market. Now, because there's no experts out there trying to pick stocks and trying to outperform the market, you actually get to spend a lot less money on fees. So imagine, for example, you have a bucket, you drop in there 500 companies, and all you're doing is basically just investing your money into that bucket, and that's it. There's no, for example, trying to guess which are the best companies. No, it's just like the largest companies out there, and that's it. And you get the average return every single year for those 500 largest companies in the US, which account for the US market overall. Now, this is a very lazy way of investing, because all you do is just send money over there. The money grows at an average of like 11% for the past 72 years or so. And it's kind of very boring, right? That's all it takes. It takes really no skill whatsoever. And I did not like that idea because, well, getting 11% from doing basically no work versus getting, for example, 20 to 22% doing it the Warren Buffett way, like going out there and picking stocks by doing discount cash flow formulas and all this other stuff, it sounded a lot more sexy. Going out there and studying individual stocks, picking the winners and this and that, until I actually started doing it. And I realized that after hours and hours and hours of reading, that investing this way was not about being smart. It was not about being lucky per se. It was just about being consistent. Being consistent in the sense that when you think about Warren Buffett, he spends his entire day just reading, not just, for example, little books. It's more like financial statements, okay? And understand what a business is, how to actually buy at a good price, and holding on unless anything actually changes. Now, that is a lot of work. That is an entire career. And when I realized that, I was like, this is actually not what I want to do with my life. Spend 8 hours reading financial statements every single day. And that's why I got into low cost index fund investing. Although it's not sexy, it just works. Now, if you're wondering, Tommy, what exactly do you invest your money into? The answer is very simple. Some folks out there, they like to invest, for example, into the international market, because they do have index funds for that too, by the way, into the small cap market, like the smaller companies actually rising and coming above. And you also have, for example, medium cap or the entire stock market, or for example, the Australian market, whatever you actually want to do, you can find an index fund for it. But my only investment is just into the S&P 500. That's where 100% of my money in the stock market basically is. 100% of it. Now, why? Because when you think about it, if you're invested into the 500 largest companies in the US, right, you're basically invested into the US market overall, because those companies account for 80% of all the outputs in the US economy. Now, if that fails, What does that tell you? It tells you that basically we live in an economy where it's intertwined. If we fail, China is going to have problems. China fails, we might have some problems. The whole economy is intertwined. So the only way I lose is basically if the entire world loses, and at that point it really doesn't matter. So that's why I invest just into the S&P 500. And by the way, for the past 10 years, it's made about 12.21%. If you use, for example, a little formula called just divided by 72, it means that basically if you take 72 divided by the return, it tells you how long it'll take you to actually double your money. For this rate, you're looking at, for example, I get to double my money every 6 years, but on average, it's more like every 6 to 9 years or so. And it only cost me a whopping 0.03% as an expense ratio, meaning I'm basically spending no money as far as, for example, fees. While some people out there pay managers 1 or 2% to actually do this stuff, I don't pay any of those fees whatsoever. So that's why for the average person, the best thing to do is just going to be invest in a low cost index fund. For me, I use Vanguard, there's Fidelity, there's Charles Schwab, but I do recommend the big three because you don't want to be invested into little brokers funds like, for example, like Robinhood or M1 Finance or Acorns. They're good, solid places, but you really want to have your money somewhere that has a massive record because again, this is for a lifetime. This is for retirement for the most part. Now, number 2, guys, is don't try to time the market. Now, I struggle with this also because when you first start investing, you're always trying to figure out when can I buy and then when can I sell? And whenever you ask those questions, you're not talking about investing, you're talking about gambling and guesswork. And here's what happened to me in 2020, right before the pandemic actually happened. I was investing regularly, like always. But then the pandemic actually happened, and I invested a lot of money into my normal boring investments like the index funds and a load of money into one stock, and that stock was basically Delta. And I bought a lot. Under what circumstance? I assume that basically Delta is a solid airline company. The world is shut down, but eventually it's going to open back up. And on top of that, hey, the price for Delta has been an average X amount and is actually a solid company. Right now is basically the value like crazy because of everything going on, but I do think is going to go right back up. Now, when I bought this company and I actually sold it like a year later, I made around 128%. Basically, I doubled my money very quickly. Now, for those reasons, you might think, Tommy, what a smart investment. What a good opportunity that was. The answer was that was very stupid of me. And it was not investing. It was just basically speculation. And here's why. Because whenever you talk about, for example, the price used to be this, I think because of circumstances, is this what's going to happen? That's like qualitative stuff, but you don't talk about like the quantitative information. Like, hey, Tommy, what are the employees like? How much free cash flow does this company actually make? How much does it actually take to actually operate the business overall? Those are real concrete figures we actually get to calculate the exact price of what this company should be selling for. I was not doing that, and I know that. So this is how I can know I just got lucky. And trying to say, well, I timed the market then, the answer was no, I just got lucky. And timing the market doesn't work. You might hear people talk about like, hey, I time the market all the time. Most of the time it's just fake news. And just got lucky every now and then. And that's why Warren Buffett, his whole thing is not about trying to time the market. His whole thing is trying to take advantage of opportunities and being prepared for it. For example, think about Warren Buffett this way, okay? This guy always holds about $20 billion in cash, okay? This is basically money to make acquisitions when the time comes. When does the time come? Well, if you read this book right here, which I highly recommend if you like Warren Buffett, it's called The Warren Buffett Way. If you read this book right here, it tells you that Warren Buffett is constantly always researching different companies. So he has a bunch of figures in his head about what a company should be worth, what it's selling for, and what he can buy it at. Okay, so whenever the market basically falls, it goes down, he has a company in his mind which he can basically go ahead and buy for a big discount. But it's not about, for example, hey, the price used to be X, now the price is lower, so automatically it must be a good investment. That is not what it is about, okay? And that's why when you think about investing, you really got to think about, for example, the actual figures. And the actual figures plus an opportunity, that is what creates, for example, a good once in a lifetime chance type thing, okay? Now, number 3, guys, okay? This was actually pretty good. Debt is super dangerous, you know? I don't know how many videos I've watched, shareholder meetings of Warren Buffett I've watched so far, a lot of them. And also the books I read, I think it was like the Snowball. Warren Buffett's like a 46-hour audiobook. It was kind of crazy. But I like Warren Buffett a lot. I respect him a lot. And that's why I invest the way I invest today. I owe the guy a lot financial wise, okay? But when it comes down to it, you never think about this, okay, guys? But Warren Buffett is not big on debt, whether it's consumer debt, like credit card debt, whether it's, for example, like investment debt, like borrowing money to basically buy investments, like buying investments on margin. He does not do that stuff, okay? And he has a big article, and this article, I never actually read the article, but I heard him talk about the article. I also heard other people talk about the article, but it's this article he wrote that basically says, getting into debt to invest money into stocks is like going down a hill on a car where basically you're driving without your seatbelt, you have no airbag, and you also have, for example, a knife taped to the steering wheel. So you're going down, imagine that, okay? Going down a crazy steep hill, knife taped to the steering wheel. And if something happens to you, you're like gone. You're blown. Because on a margin account, when the stocks go down 50%, you basically get everything erased. And the whole idea is, yes, borrowing money maximizes your gains, but also maximizes your losses. And no one talks about that. And borrowing money all the time increases your level of risk. Now, Warren Buffett, in all my studies, what I've actually seen is that he does borrow money sometimes, like, but that's like a whole different thing. And he lends a lot of money too. But when it comes for his personal life, he had, for example, a mortgage for 30 years. But that was also an investment tool for him and his job. So that's a lot more different. But for the personal person, like the average person, I highly don't recommend you getting into debt to invest anything whatsoever. I highly don't recommend you get into a bunch of debt you can't afford, like a whole bunch of student loan debt and all this other stuff. Debt is a massive burden and you kind of want to avoid it. So for me personally, I live a life where I'm basically debt free. I have credit cards that are open. I use the one bill method to basically maintain it. Look that up on YouTube. But I'm actually going to close them down pretty soon also because I just don't want to deal with them whatsoever. So I live a debt-free lifestyle and that takes away a lot of my stress, including I have a home. It's paid off too. You can always do that also if you watch my videos on YouTube. Now, number 4, this right here is the last one, which is basically be simple. And when you invest, only invest into what you actually understand. You know, as far as, for example, simple investing, it would look like you're investing into a low-cost index fund. You're investing regularly to basically do dollar cost average. That basically means you invest the same amount of money when the times are good, the times are bad. So overall, you get average returns, and that's more than fine. And as far as lifestyle, Warren Buffett could buy literally any house on this planet, and he chooses to live in the same neighborhood, the same house he had for the past like 30, 40 plus years or so, and he basically works the same things all the time, eats the same food all the time. Now, I'm not saying that should be your lifestyle, but I am saying that he figured out a long time ago that consumer stuff, material stuff, does not really bring any happiness. But the freedom and independence that money can bring you, in a sense, in the financial world, is a lot more better when it comes to happiness as far as financial stuff, okay, guys? And I think, honestly, this is an honest thought here. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, by the way, comment down below I made it, so you made it all the way to the end of the video. But overall, I honestly think that the only reason that Warren Buffett is rich is just because he happens to love a game that gets him rich. But if it wasn't this game he actually loved, like the investing game, and he just basically loved to pick up garbage, he would be one of the best garbage people out there, but he wouldn't be rich. But he would love what he does, okay? This happens to be the game he loves to play is a game that makes him a lot of money. And that is it. That's 4 pieces of advice from Warren Buffett that I want to share with you guys that actually helped me out a ton. Low cost index fund, invest into things you really understand, keeping it simple, not getting into crazy debt. And I think I missed one, actually no, but it was basically don't try to time the market. And when it comes to not trying to time the market, just invest regularly. For me, it's like 10, 15%, 20% of your income every time you get paid, and you invest that money every single month, bi-weekly, whenever you get paid, and make that a habit. And that way you're not worried about ups and downs whatsoever. And by the way, I've actually paused my investments, but more on that on another day. There you go. I kind of messed that up. Okay, but more on that on another video. It's for a good reason, and it's not about like interrupting compound interest because that would be a bad idea. But it's for a good reason, and that's why you really want to use common sense when it comes to investing. So things that you do make sense for you and your financial future. But that is it, guys. Thanks for watching. Comment down below. Made it, so I know you made all this in the video. Up here is another video. Over here is my face. Subscribe. And as always, long-term team officially out.